conversation of kind of implementing the solutions that we're talking about. We kind of have a diverse table here of maybe kind of boots on the ground and all the way to maybe some of the generals calling the shots in this effort a little bit. So we'll start with introductions. Karen Hall, welcome back to the show. Thanks for coming back. The superintendent, Maplewood, Richmond Heights School District. Also Mike Jones with St. Louis County, and Miriam Mahan, Saints Joachim and Ann Care Services in St. Charles. I've seen you on when I've covered floods before. You're out there in the trenches. Are you seeing this kind of thing, this suburban poverty, and are we doing enough about it?
No, absolutely not. But although I agree in many of the comments that have already been made, I don't in others. We tend to believe that suburbia was always a place where there was money. But the suburbia that we're talking about just 30 years ago, and I'm talking for St. Charles, Lincoln, and Warren area, were rural. And the poverty was there, generational poverty. And so we have had in the last 35 years migration from the rural areas to St. Charles and migration from the city and the county. So many of those families and individuals, and now the children of the children that culturally were the seasonal workers and the working poor, continue to do and be in that situation, and they are finding out that it's very difficult in suburbia, or for us, St. Charles County, to access services because we do not have them. And I want to mention the fact that one of the gentlemen mentioned about suburbia shifts. That is a fact. The shifts have happened, but what has not happened is that public policy have not supported those shifts. Most of public policy is done with the perception of urban core. Urban core leads public policy, when actually the poverty, not only in our area, the United States at large, it's in the rural areas. And so there is formulas for the school districts from HUD, from Health and Human Services. And those formulas no longer are equitable for where the migration of poverty. We also need to talk about the immigrant, the seniors, the aging population that we're seeing an increase in poverty. So there's many, many factors, but if we really want to talk about a solution, we really need to come to the table, all of us, and talk about the public policy and the formulas and how the funds are distributed to address the needs of the communities.
Certainly St. Charles County has changed from rural to suburban, but St. Louis County has been suburban for some time. Is this something that is a priority for the county?
Obviously, we just completed our new 5-year plan that makes dealing with the suburban poverty a major issue. It's one of the reasons we had the forum this afternoon. St. Louis County, the change in St. Louis County is a little bit different. 30 years ago, St. Louis County, 50 years ago, was a unbuilt suburban environment. Now it's a built urban environment. And it's beginning to have the issues that built urban environments have. You have issues of redevelopment as opposed to development. What has to happen is that both the political culture and the political structure has to catch up. I think Todd mentioned that earlier in the show, has to catch up with the reality on the ground. And I would say that what we're attempting to do with a lot of this effort today is to begin that conversation so that at least people get the same cognitive reality. And until you get that, you can't even have a discussion about what's the politics of fixing the policy.
So if we need a quarterback, can St. Louis County do that? We have 24 municipalities in just one school district. Who can be the quarterback in our suburbs?
arguably think it could be the county, and in theory it could be, but the reality is the county is not a city. So in the city, there's one geographic unit and it has a mayor, okay? And everybody knows that the mayor is in charge of the city. There's a very good question about who's in charge of St. Louis County. 2/3 of the people live in a municipality. 2/3 of the geography is in incorporated St. Louis County. So the direct political jurisdiction, the ability to impact policy, I would argue most of the delegation to the General Assembly, regardless of political party, don't see themselves as geopolitically aligned with St. Louis County, where all the legislatures in the city, and I would say for 30 years, whether they politically align with the mayor or not, they understand that they represent St. Louis City. So the reason people moved to the suburbs 50 years ago was not to deal with the issues of being in cities. And now what you have is a county that very much resembles the city without the political and cultural infrastructure to actually begin to address this reality, as opposed to the reality that it was created under 40, 50 years ago.
It's interesting.
Tell us what's going on in Maplewood, Richmond Heights. How are you attacking this?
Well, it's fascinating to listen to all the other guests because they're speaking on a macro level, and I'm in the trenches, and I have a face to the poverty issues and how we respond to that. Maplewood Richmond Heights is it's a wonderful area, but it's also a challenging area in the sense because we are diverse. We have those that are doing well, and then we have about half of our student population that are struggling in poverty.
I think that would surprise a lot of people if you said Maplewood, Richmond Heights, just like that statistic of where the poverty is in the suburbs versus the city. Are people surprised when they know this?
Well, they are surprised, mainly because of how well we are trying to wrap around our students and deal with the issues of poverty. You know, it's part of our mission to provide educational equity for all students. So we work very hard. The Board of Education has been committed to small class sizes, to innovative programming, to look at, okay, what are we dealing with right now? What are the needs of our students, and then meet those needs. We have a food pantry. We have a nonprofit for teenage boys who need a home called Joe's Place. We have another nonprofit on our early childhood center called Mosaic Services, which provides extracurricular enrichment activities for young people that are in poverty. So we try to think outside the box, say, okay, what is the need, and then innovate around that.
So how do you make the so if the other half of the population in your area isn't dealing with this on a personal, how are you making the case to everyone that this is in everyone's interest to deal with this?
You know, that is a very good question, because it's a growing concern. It's not a glaring concern yet, because really the residents in the Maplewood Richmond Heights area, they like the diversity. However, there does become a strain when you start talking about money and how much it costs to educate a child. And the reality is it does cost more money to educate a young person that's coming to you who is struggling from, you know, financial issues at home. The example that I like to use to really give a picture to why some things cost more for children in poverty. If you have two children, 5 years old, one coming from middle class, upper middle class, and one who's coming from poverty. Now, let's talk about their preparation in terms of a backpack, and that's the metaphor. So you have the 5-year-old. Up until that time, their family has been able to read to them. There's probably, you know, several books at home. They've traveled, maybe even out of the country. They've gone to museums. There's a lot of one-to-one conversation to develop language. But you have a child in their backpack that's coming from poverty. You know, they're transient, they're moving around, just like another guest said. There's a lot of stress just to meet needs. You may not have the time to have a one-to-one conversation to develop language. So when you think about it in concrete terms like that, then that translates on, okay, both of these children need to have the same, you know, academic outcomes. But in order for the child coming from poverty to meet them, they have these deficits already once they come to the door because they haven't had those experiences. So that translates into more teachers that need to spend time one-on-one to help with the delayed language, to help them with reading, to help them with math. That's what I'm looking at, additional staff, salaries, benefits, all of that to support young people, to wrap around them to ensure that they do have a quality education. So it gets hard when people don't really understand that, and you have to take the time to explain that really we're trying to level the playing field, but still provide their child, the ones that aren't in poverty, with a very excellent education as well. So it's a balancing act.